really cool thing that I think is amazing is our sense of beauty is encoded in our brain over millions of years of human development. I think now at this time, with the way therapy and psychology and conversations and wellness are trending, and now design, that we're really talking about that gut kind of feeling. To tell me is I need help, I'm not comfortable, I'm not happy. And I think realizing that how much of this information is actually from our environment.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Game Changer Podcast. My name is Michelle Dutro. I'm your host, and I am thrilled today. I'm thrilled to be joined by Nicole simply because we had some technical difficulties and almost this didn't happen. So thank you, universe, for coming together and allowing the technology gods to ultimately work in our favor. That said, since we are talking about things that go wrong, things that go right, and things that could be better, there is really nobody better that we're chatting with today than Nicole Baxter. Here we go. Nicole is changing the way we think about design, not just something we see, but something we feel. Nicole is an interior designer and construction coach with over 30 years of experience and the creator of NeuroAesthetics of Home Theory, the framework that helped launch the neuroaesthetic movement in interior design. Did you even know that that was a thing, let alone that it was launched? Primarily, she's it. Her work bridges neuroscience, psychology, and beauty, helping people create spaces that don't just look good, but that support healing, calm, and connection. She's also training as a trauma-informed life coach. I bet you didn't think that had anything to do with interior design. Well, stick around. Integrating emotional well-being into every part of her design process. Nicole is the author of the upcoming book, Designing the Emotional Home, Design Consciously, Live Beautifully. She does 8-hour seminars a couple of times a year. We're going to catch up with her at the end on all the places that you can learn more. Don't even kid yourself. But all of that, Nicole, was there anything that I left out that people need to know about you before we dive in?
Oh my gosh, that was amazing. And I'm so happy to be here. And hi to everyone who's listening. I hope you guys enjoy this.
Yay, great. Well, let's start with, which is always fascinating to me, how people got into the line of work they got into. So before we get down, how you niche down into this specific thing, but what about creating happy and healthy environments ever even triggered you or spoke to you from the beginning? How did you even get started in the world of interior design as a career field?
Sure. I grew up in it. My dad was an architect. So it was always, I'm terrible at math. That would always turn into fights. So it kind of became obvious very early on that I would not be an architect. And it just naturally evolved into interior design and making models and rearranging bedrooms and, all that kind of stuff. The typical designer story.
Yes. Okay. Well, fair enough. Interesting, though, that your dad was an architect. So you probably have a little more of a structured, formal background than what, maybe many people would think just purely on the design aesthetic side of things.
Correct.
So when you first started, what is the part of interior design that connected you to emotional well-being? Because to be honest, I know several interior designers, and I have a background. I'm going to tip my thing up right here. That entire shelf is devoted to feng shui. So this is not a foreign space for me. But there's a lot of people that don't connect emotional well-being. They just look at, well, what colors speak to you? And let's look at color patterns and what colors go together. But it really doesn't broach the topic of how does this make you feel? When did that start for you and why?
So I've always enjoyed new home construction and renovations is one of my favorite aspects of it because it's where designers really have the biggest impact. If you hire us after the building has already been planned, then you miss design opportunities. If you hire us when the house is done and it's time to put the furniture in, you're going to be hard pressed to get the furniture to have a conversation with the architecture. And I look at designers as specialists. We create the interface between architecture and the human that lives in that space. And so we factor in materials and function flow, your personal style and taste, and we kind of manage and arrange all of it. And we're a bit of a control freak in that regard, but that's our talent, that's our gift, and that's why we can create emotional experiences. So that came up bout at a client's housewarming party back in 2016. Um, Everybody's walking around oohing and awing at the house the first time our friends had seen it. And my business coach came in and she's looking around and she's like, "Oh my God, I finally get what you do for a living. All this time, I thought you help people pick out furniture and paint colors, but that's not what you do at all. You create emotional experiences." And my entire career, I had been trying to explain to people what I do, but I could never really explain what it was. And so it's like, yeah, I help people pick out furniture and paint colors. Like you kind of go back to that because we didn't have the vocabulary for it. But that's sort of like me saying, I'm a chef. I pick out ingredients and spices, or I'm a writer. I pick out words and punctuation. And it's really about the story. So that lit my brain on fire. The next morning, I'm making coffee, and that's when the emotional home and design consciously live beautifully popped into my head. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go sit down on Google and spend the morning going through and seeing what I can learn about this. And I found absolutely nothing online at all. So my brain is raging, get the great dopamine rush. And I wound up just sitting on Google doing countless Google searches for probably about 2 weeks and noting everything that I can find. And I think the real pivotal moment for me was when I discovered that the brain processes beauty in the limbic system. So the limbic system is your emotional system, and it's also a very old animal brain. So once we know that it's in the limbic system and it's part of the emotional system, right? Then we know that this is part of evolution. So beauty is not a luxury. It's not a modern day. It is in terminology. It's not really a modern day thing. It goes way back to our survival and human existence and development. And I think one of the things I just really want to talk about real quickly is sort of divide our brains, because we've got two brains, right? We've got the brain that sits on our shoulder, and then we've got the brain that sits in our stomach. And that's our emotional brain that we're all experience when we feel emotions. But I think now at this time, with the way therapy and psychology and conversations and wellness are trending, and now design, that we're really talking about that gut kind of feeling. And it was that gut hit when you walk into a beautiful space. Like, think about how you feel. You've been into restoration hardware, right?
Oh, yeah.
And how did you feel the first time you walked in?
That I wish I had more money.
But you probably also, I don't know if you realized it, but when you walked in, you probably had an instant hit, and then you let out a long, deep breath, and your shoulders fell and your body
Because
relaxed.
you love it. And you think, oh my gosh, wouldn't I love this space? Hence the,
Right.
wow, because if I had an endless, I would just say, take this and, move it to my living room.
Right.
Which is what they're trying to do, is to conjure up emotion, right? To say, wouldn't this be great if this was your life?
Well, and then
Because it feels better.
Okay, so yeah, so I see two topics here as a designer. So that emotional hit and that relaxation, that's that emotional experience that designers create, right? That we didn't know that's what it was. But I'm going to ask you this. Is restoration hardware truly your style, or do you really just want to take the emotions home?
It's not my style, and this is a great conversation because there are a lot of environments or places that I walk in and I love, but I wouldn't necessarily, because I can appreciate. I live in Southern California, and there's a lot of homes, let's use La Jolla as an example, that are very contemporary, all white, floor to glass, walls, and that feels luxurious. The fact that everything is white, that would never be my home for a multitude of reasons. I also appreciate a very North Woods lodge feeling, But I'm not a hunter, but I can appreciate that whole lodge vibe. I could list 5 others that give me such a feeling of peace and calm and inviting, that there's an aspect of my personality that taps into. It's not my whole personality. Now, to your point, there are things that hit at 80% versus, say, 20, where those are each maybe 20 or 30%, and I respect it and get it, but it's by no means anything where I'm saying, boy, I'd move in tomorrow because I would never move into an all-white home. I have a dog. An all-white home would never, I had 2 kids. From the beginning, an all-white home would never have been an option. But I can appreciate part of it, and to your point, that relaxation feeling is there are restoration hardware. I'm trying to think of other ones. What is it? Is it Pottery Barn?
Hmm.
Even Williams-Sonoma from a kitchen perspective, where I'm just thinking, oh my God, if this was my pantry,
Right.
where I just stop and think, wow, this is amazing. It's so organized. It makes sense. Look at the layout of this. That yes, the first thing is this would be wonderful.
And it's the
This
same thing when
is
you go into
great.
it's the same thing when you go into like nice high-end hotel, right? It's
Absolutely.
all that design, it's playing on the five senses that it just makes you relax. And so what I've been kind of doing is engineering it backwards, like, right? Why do these spaces make us feel that way? Why do my clients' houses feel that way? What is restoration hardware doing that designers are also doing? And so I kind of started to unravel that and started looking at how do we see things, right? And what it really comes down to is when you're in a space that is very concise, right? We're not taking everything we like and putting it into a room. We're not doing chaos chic or eclectic or something like that. We're putting it together the way we would put together an outfit. What pieces that we're wearing are talking to each other. How are the accessories working in? And you look at it and you may not be able to define the style you're wearing, but when you see it that, man, you nailed it. You look great. It all goes together. And then everybody who sees you is like, oh man, girl, you look really good today. So we're doing that in our house. And what that does is it reduces the processing load on our brain. If there's a lot of things that are scattered about and there's no pattern, because our brain is a pattern seeking machine, if there's no pattern and relationship, the brain has to work really hard to make sense of it. And so let's talk about beauty not as beauty. And let's not talk about, eclectic and some of these other environments that they lack a cohesion. Let's switch this now to nervous system talk. Let's switch it to safety and danger. And what we do as designers, by controlling so much of the narrative and making sure everything makes sense, your body's relaxing because you feel safe, because it's been told it's safe. That's why you relax in restoration hardware. And when we're in chaotic spaces, our body reads it instantly as danger. And that's why we feel anxiety and a little bit unsettled for those first hits, for those first few minutes. But then it goes back up to our brain and it processes it on a more rational perspective.
Makes complete sense to me. So, as somebody who is a PTSD therapist, and I have a PTSD retreat center, so everything about what we're talking about matters because from the second somebody arrives here, everything that they feel matters, right?
Mhm.
Everything is either going to be, to your point, chaotic and make the brain work on overload, or an instant deep breath and okay, I can trust the space that I'm in to be relaxed enough to have a conversation about what's happening internally. So, that said, since I know you work being trauma informed and working toward that, and I know you rely or look at integrating Myers Briggs tests. So, when you're looking at working with somebody and looking at someone's space, and if somebody is sitting here listening and they're sitting in their living room right now or their kitchen with a cup of coffee, looking around their room to think, oh, is this chaotic? How does this make me feel? How is it that somebody's personality is such a factor? Not on the trauma side, but just their personality. Are they outgoing? Are they fun and energetic? Are they more of an introvert and laid back that should be taken into account more than should this room be more blue or should it be more beige? What is it that you look at on personality type? And then secondarily, what happens when you have two people that are married living in the same space or roommates, whatever that may be, and their personalities are vastly different? So how does that work for everybody to live harmoniously in the same space?
Wow, great questions. So, when you look at the Myers Briggs, it's all about how our brain evaluates and processes information and what it uses to base decisions on. So, if we look at the like the INTJ type, and that's going to be they're intuitive, they're they're introverted, they're intuitive, they're thinking, and they're action structure checklist oriented. That person, I tend to think of them as like Data or Mr. Spock, right? They're very, very rational. They're not really emotional. In fact, they really don't see that emotions have a value, right? Because it's not factored into the things that they do. When you have that intuition and thinking function pair, what you develop with those two together is strategy. So these people are highly strategic. So if you're thinking about flight schedules with airplanes or designing road systems and software, that's very much a strategic thinking personality. So these guys tend to be really great with beautiful offices, minimal kind of furnishings. I'm not going to ever really categorize people as having a specific style, but to be honest, a lot of INTJs tend to gravitate towards more minimalism, right? Less ornamentation around. Patterns, because it triggers that intuitive strategy side of their brain, is really good. And they tend to be minimalists. They're not going to have piles of paper everywhere because they love tech and that kind of thing. So it's all going to be on their laptop. And they can spend hours and hours and hours in their house by themselves, studying and working and researching, and they're perfectly fine. Now, if you were to come over to their house and they were to take you on a tour of their house, it'd be like, yeah, here's the living room, here's the kitchen. They'll go into the entire story of how they plan the kitchen, and then they'll take you and show you their office, and that's going to be their favorite room, right? Now let's contrast that with an ISFJ. So they are intuitive. I'm sorry, I did it again. They are introverted. They're sensing, which means they notice what they can see and observe and touch. They're very linear A to B to C to D thinking. And they use their mind to come up with solutions for people because that F is feeling, right? That ISF is feeling, and then they are a J, right? So again, structured, get things done. When you take the sensing and feeling function pair, you're now looking at people, what they need in this moment, and how you can help them with their needs physically, right? So we're not systems thinking, we're what do you need right now? So think about a nurse. She sees a kid who fell down. She's going to put a Band-Aid on him, and she's going to give him a kiss and maybe a lollipop and say, everything's great. If you think about the classic 50s stereotype housewife, right? The cooking is done. The cleaning is done. The buttons you had loose have been magically sewn on. The hole in your sock is gone. Your favorite food is there. It's that thinking that they understand and they see what you need in the moment. So if I'm designing for someone like that, one, I know they're going to prioritize everybody in their house before they prioritize themselves. So I will push them to have a nice bedroom. I don't want to make more work for them, right? We don't want any more fancy things. We want to throw luxury in their path. So that always also means that maybe we focus on upgrading the kitchen and the appliances or adding some color and pattern and interesting things in the laundry room. We want to kind of bring ceremony and ritual and a little bit of luxury to the things that they do every day to make them feel appreciated.
So the person's, like I said, still having coffee in the kitchen listening to this. Should they, before they, I don't know, take on a project of even upgrading or, re-energizing their home area, do you suggest everybody know their personality type? That I'm assuming here that you may know what you like, but you may not know why. And so if you knew your personality type, then you could go, aha, my type is somebody, like she said, that is more structured. That is why I want my office to be the priority of what I'm doing. That's my driver, if you will. So does it make sense for someone to go, let me figure out what my personality type is, and then maybe use that as some indicators to why things work for me and why things don't?
I think that'd be brilliant because that speaks to what your values are and your organization. It's not going to speak necessarily to your style, but it'll tell you what areas of the room and what things in your life you value. Because I always find it interesting that so often everybody wants to design to their idealized life, right? Like, I don't entertain, but you better believe if I build a nice house, I'm gonna have that big dining room for all my friends to come over, and I'm gonna have plan my whole house around a party that I'm never gonna have, right? And I think the Myers-Briggs and a large part of the emotional home is let's look at who are you now? Where are you now? Where do you want to go? And how do we get there? And what's realistic for you and what makes you happy? And I think it sort of gives permission to walk away from the trends, right? And really embrace your own true identity.
Agreed. I agree with all of that. So so someone's getting a handle on their personality type, and which focuses at them on the logical room that they would throw their first dollars at, if you will. Secondarily, and we kind of already touched on this, but I want to spend some more time, is the things that people have in their home. I personally have never understood it, but the things that people have in their home out of obligation. So Aunt Zelda, who gave us this vase for Christmas, some years ago, that we don't like, it doesn't fit in. Maybe it's some kind of mask that's quite scares us. I don't know. Maybe it's a clown head. I don't know what it is, or some doll. Dolls always have scared me. So, but it's something that just gives us the willies. And here's the deal: Aunt Zelda lives halfway across the nation. She's never just randomly stopping by. She's never even come over. So I just look at the things that people have around their home that they feel they're obligated to have. And when you really stop and think about why, it really makes no logical sense. I'm sure, obviously, it's much deeper than that. But I want to talk about the person, or if you're out and about right now, here is your challenge when you go home. Look around whatever the room is. And does everything there bring you joy? Odds are there's something that doesn't. And so I want to speak to the things that you work with people that I'm not going to go so far as to say they're traumatizing, but that don't bring us joy. And what weight that carries that we may not realize throughout our day that actually impacts our life when we have things around that are not serving our higher good.
Right, right. I would say Aunt Zelda isn't giving you something just to give you something. She might not think that it's about the ugly vase or whatever it is that she's giving you. I think she wants to feel like she has a presence and a connection and a place in your life and in your house. And so when she comes over and sees what she's given you, and to be honest, she probably looked at everything she owned and picked out the one thing that she really thought that would work best in your house, right? So there's a lot of good intention. Whether it works in our style or not, there's something special about Aunt Zelda walking through your house and seeing that she is physically represented through that ugly vase. But the good thing is clowns and vases fit in boxes, right? So it means something to Aunt Zelda. It touches her deeply. That's that human connection point. It's okay to put that in a box until Aunt Zelda comes. She's not going to know. When it comes to bigger family pieces, I think that it's absolutely okay to say no, but no and, right? If we think about our family pieces the way we think about shopping, and we figure out what are the best pieces for us to have. And I think people get scared of the big pieces, and the big pieces are the ones that I love most. I've gone into people's houses that have seas of end tables and random little chairs and small little things, and there's only so much you can do with that. But if you're looking at the house and you're like, hey, Grandma, I really want this break front for my dining room, you can find ways to make it look like you've planned your entire dining room around that break front. And that doesn't mean you have to make your space as traditional as the break front. You can go completely modern. The trick is to make it feel like it was a deliberate choice and it belongs there rather than as some sore thumb that just sits in the space. Does that make sense?
Am I the only one in the room that doesn't know what a break front is?
Oh, that's like a china cabinet.
A china cabinet.
Sorry.
Okay, now I'm gonna have to go back and re-listen to this whole part again to go, what could that possibly be in the dining room?
It's a china cabinet.
Okay, yes, all right, the china cabinet. And I agree with you on these big pieces. And, here's the thing. The largest segment of the population right now being baby boomers, we are getting into the time where the most of the amount of people are going to be passing away, and thus the entirety of their home being handed down. And I do know what that is of being bestowed all of these very large pieces that are, some of them very old, antique, turn of the century, big, heavy oak, whatever it is, that if that's not fitting in, you just said you can say something with the word and. So somebody is saying, hey, here is that, what was it called, a break front?
Yep. China cabinet, break front.
Here's the china cabinet, the break front, the big hutch piece, the big, everything was just so monstrous. Here's all these big pieces that we're going to just have delivered to your doorstep. So what is the response to not offend anybody when it just does not match anything, so that you don't wind up with a house that's chaotic and hodgepodge that now creates a lot of distress?
I mean, what I would say is no thank you, but there's that piece over there that I've had my eye on, right? You're accepting the gift, you're accepting the generosity, but it's also no and, right? We're not going to say no but. It's no thank you, which is completely fair to say, and I would like that. And
okay, so you're calling out the thing that makes sense, that when it is in your home, it would have meaning.
Yes, it'll have meaning and it'll make sense to what you have. I mean, let's really think about this. Are people giving their furniture away for it to live forever in our houses because it was so special to them? Or, I mean, I'm sure there is that element of it, but are people giving their furniture away just because they can't handle the idea of taking it to a dump or to a Goodwill, or they think that you have a need in your house, right? Are their intentions what we really think they are, or is there a world where they're all raised by, depression parents and the idea of throwing out a piece of furniture doesn't fit into their head, right? So we're not always insulting them when we're like, yeah, no, I'm good. But if there is something that's really special and meaningful to you, it works as a memory trigger and a touch point. And I love that when you're in someone's house and maybe you're having a bad day or you're struggling at work and you're in that period where you just feel dark and down on yourself and maybe rejected or unloved or whatever, you can actually sit in front of that break front, take a few deep breaths, center yourself, and use that break front to remind yourself, what did it feel like when I was at grandma's house when I was 5 years old? What did the cooking smell like? What did the sounds smell like? And they work as wonderful emotional supportive triggers for us. That's why I like them.
Perfect. And I think that is a beautiful thing, that not only should we not have things that cause us distress, but we should go out of our way to have things that are those anchor pieces. That, like you said, when you have a bad day, you can say, I can't wait to get home, and I'm going to, go get whatever that is, glass of wine, cup of tea, whatever, and just sit and be in that space that automatically makes me feel better.
Mm-hmm. Safe.
Yes, safe. I love that. As your interior design background and everything that you bring to the table, when you do walk in someone's home, and I know, it's impossible. Whatever our background is just comes with us, whether we're hired to do it or not. What are a few things that just automatically, because it's the way your brain is wired, you look for? And not even say you look for, you notice, you observe, because there's just no way for you not to. The kind of the big things. I'll start off by saying one for me is walking in a room is energy flow. Is if I'm walking in a room and there's a piece of furniture that just blocks you, that you have to work your way around to get into the room, energetically doesn't work. That's me. So for you, what are just things that right away, like I said, without even trying, you are just automatic on a few of these top things that no matter personality type, no matter whatever, that are just kind of, rules of thumb that either automatically work or automatically don't?
Definitely light. natural light, artificial light, ceiling heights. I noticed the architecture of a space immediately. And it's really interesting because actually I feel it more than I see it. And then I notice what their furniture is. I notice not from a judgmental perspective, but I notice how chaotic their house is. And I like that because I don't want people to clean and organize before I get there. I want to see you in your natural space so I can understand how you live and then we can have some conversations around it, right? But I need those clues to be able to figure out your mystery. And then I always I always notice the furniture, right? And sometimes it's great, like, I would love to reuse this. Sometimes it's the obvious, this is not gonna work kind of thing. And then it's also working with the client to have them kind of put a list together for me. What goes, what absolutely has to stay, and what's negotiable. And I'm a huge fan of reusing things if you can reupholster something. So, it tends to be a bit of an investment or maybe refinish something, but I like keeping things that we can.
So you started out right in the beginning with light and natural light or any version of light so that someone's, not living in a cave,
Gosh, yeah.
which yes, we're on the same page with that as well. If somebody has, they have a little bit of money, they don't have a ton of money, but they have a little bit of money and they're thinking, okay, I'm gonna take this personality test. I'm going to look around and see what makes me happy and what maybe makes me go, oh God, why is that there? And so I'll do the things that they said. Now I want to focus on a few things that Nicole would believe are important to say, hey, here are, I think, I don't know what it was, the 80s, who knows when. But, there was a period of time where, you just can't have enough pillows, and
That
boy, oh
was the
boy, you,
80s.
you walked into Pier 1 and it's the wall of pillows and oh my word, there's not enough of them to be had. So just some things that you would say, hey, the automatic upgrade, the things if you've got a few $100s that are going to make a difference or to just take a look at that will, when you walk in the door the next time, will just kind of make you feel a little brighter. What
Mhm.
are some things that you would say, hey, consider this?
So the first thing we're going to do is we're gonna sit in our space and see how it feels and objectively look at it and see which items are referencing one another. What can you see in these pieces that you can also see in these pieces across the room? And like look for those clues in the house because those are your seeds of developing a concept. So we like those. And I would say clear out some of the smaller things. You really kind of need to see your space fresh. So we don't want to have a lot of stuff in the room when we're on this journey. And how do you feel in the space? If you have a few $100s, I might start with a new rug. I think people tend to buy rugs that are too small. The rule is everything on the furniture, and if everything can't be, I'm sorry, everything on the rug, and if everything can't be on the rug, all front feet are on the rug, right? We don't want the cocktail table sitting on an island, with the furniture working as sort of like a moat around it. We want everything on the floor. That is immediately going to feel grounding and calming. After that, I would say, let's look at the lamps. Is there a way we can find like a nice set of lamps that gives maybe a little bit of sparkle or a little bit of interest? And then you start kind of going up the investment chain. With the biggest investments that you have is definitely going to be your upholstery. But good upholstery will last you forever. But that's like
So,
top of it.
right. Okay. So this is going to be a personal question. So if you have a large room,
Uh-huh.
like I do, and it's all, everything is one big open space, living room, dining room, podcast studio, kitchen, all of it is one gigantic space. And there's 3 rugs because you have 3 distinct areas,
Mm-hmm.
patterns that are complementary. Do 2 of the 3 need to be solid? How do patterns work when we're talking about rugs as far as pattern, color, things being adjacent to one another so that they're complementary and not in conflict?
I mean, obviously, that just depends on the rest of the conversation that's happening. But oftentimes, we like to keep within similar color palettes that there's some enough crossover in the rugs. Sometimes it's going to be that we have a big pattern and then a small pattern. And that's what we do when we start mixing fabrics in our schemes. We want the larger one that has some nice space around it, and then the smaller one, and then maybe a geometric to work with it. If you've got a big, huge open space, chances are you've got enough space that it's not going to look like you're living in a rug store, right? Because that's always the fear. So I think you can make it work. It's just, again, it's like that weaving together of the outfit and the story in the space and focusing on cohesion.
Perfect. That makes sense. And I like the idea of different size patterns. I know even in clothing, right? That's size of pattern makes is an important thing. And when we're combining patterns, that they're complementary in what we're wearing. I would obviously the same thing with interior design.
So,
okay,
can I talk to you about patterns for real quick?
Yes, please.
Okay. So here's a really cool thing that I think is amazing is our sense of beauty is encoded in our brain over millions of years of human development, right? Well, where did we develop? We developed in nature outside, right? So the orders and the patterns of nature make us happy when we see them emulated in an interior space. So we've got sort of that biophilic abstraction. That's what we call it, biophilia, love of nature. When you see like a giant wooden smooth wall in restoration hardware, that makes us feel grounded. A giant stone wall like a fireplace makes us feel grounded because it reminds us of cliff faces. When you have patterns in your house, we refer to them as fractals. So think about tree leaves. You've got the tree trunk, then you've got the branches, then you've got the leaves, and the pattern is repeated in the leaves of the tree and the branches. So patterns really bring us a lot of peace. And we found that there are certain levels of patterns that make us happy, and it's having some of the open space, having some negative space that your brain can fill in the gaps because that entertains it, the smaller ones. But patterning really is an important thing that just brings us grounding and peace and makes our brain super happy. And again, it all goes back to nature, even if it's not a natural pattern.
So when you are speaking about that, and it was one of the last things on my list here to chat with you about of nature in the home, and this became a big thing. I was in commercial construction for a long while, making the environment more obviously sustainable, but nature friendly.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go with tips and ideas again. When we are saying, hey, these things are just our nervous system's automatically going to register them as feeling safe and grounded.
Mm-hmm.
What are some tips in that regard? Someone's listening and they are in Manhattan, or they're in Chicago, or they're in downtown LA, and they're looking out the window going, I can't see a tree anywhere. So what are some things that can be done in those locations to help ground us and bring some nature in, even if we are in the middle of a major metropolitan city?
Right. The obvious answer is going to be in your case goods, right? We don't want to have a lot of whites and painted surfaces or glass and metal. We do want to make sure that there are some wooden pieces in the house that are a natural wood. Your brain knows wood more than any other material because it's been with us our whole lives in various forms, right? We know the temperature of it. We know the sound it makes, which is why I think when people walk on an LVB floor or an engineered hardwood floor versus a natural site finished hardwood floor, your body registers that difference, right? So bring some wood into your house by at least one, maybe two pieces of furniture, or bring it in some of the accessories. If you've got white painted built-ins, maybe put some wooden pieces there and bring it in through some of the accessories. Plants are always going to be a great way to bring it in. You can also bring in some stone, like pottery, some raw natural stone and accessories and surface materials. And believe it or not, drapery, because drapery frames the window, right? So if you have nothing to look outside, you don't really want to look at it, but you want the light, right? So we can put that midfield block that keeps your eye from going all the way out to there's nothing. We're stopping your eye here. Put some shears up, some window treatments, which should be always taller than the window, always a little bit wider than the window. And that will frame it. Even if you've got a gorgeous view, it now frames the window like a piece of art. So that helps to accent the light. So now you're picking up the light on the shears instead of the ugly view, or you're framing the beautiful view that you have by framing the window.
Perfect. Well, see, there we go. I'm certainly glad we stopped on this topic. I do know that it matters. I mean, certainly studies have been shown of people in a hospital that have a window that looks out to anything that's nature related. I mean, that's just scientifically proven that they
Yep.
recover faster.
Yep.
So
Less pain meds.
that's right, which is helpful. This is a proven scientific thing. This isn't just Nicole and Michelle being in the land of woo woo here. So, yes, everybody, all of these things insanely helpful. Before we wrap up, what are some things that I didn't ask about that you know are important that you want to make sure get conveyed to people as it relates to anything interior design, trauma informed living to make our life a little less stressful since life does its best to keep us on the edge? What are things that we didn't cover, or some ideas or tips or anything that you may have that somebody would find beneficial before we wrap up the show?
I would say sit with your space and understand it. I think that's a really important thing. I think one thing that's really important to mention is that we talked about it in the beginning, me developing this theory and how I went about doing it. We didn't quite get to the point where neuroscientists, I thought psychologists were going to talk about this, but it was actually the neuroscientists that picked it up first. And if you look up neuroaesthetics and design, and you guys are interested in this topic, you will find so much information on it that I can possibly cover right now. And I think that'll be really exciting for you. And I also think that maybe if we have a minute, since you do PTSD and trauma informed is part of the environment, can we take 2 minutes to talk about that real quickly?
Absolutely.
So, do you think people, or let me rephrase it. So, when you're working with people, do you have any sense of what some of their triggers are, or ever wonder, can some of their triggers be environmental?
Absolutely.
So, if we can figure out how to create spaces that feel safe, then maybe we can take some of those triggers away, right? I feel like we feel a lot of anxiety throughout our lives and we don't always know why. And I think our brain is smart, but it's stupid. And so it may go through, Nicole, you didn't send an email. You said something stupid. You botched this thing up. You dropped the ball here. You said something weird. Like it's going to go through all the ways I'm a horrible person. But what it's trying to tell me is I need help. I'm not comfortable. I'm not happy. And I think realizing that how much of this information is actually from our environment, and if we can clean that up, we can calm our body down. And I think people that have trauma effects, they've gone through some adverse reactions. If we can figure out how to create things that would make them feel safe, we're removing one trigger that's going to prevent them from thinking about what happened or going through that downward spiral of here's all the things that are wrong with you. And I think that, to me, is one of the most profound parts of this, is that we want to feel good in our houses and we want to take stress away, but it's also an incredibly powerful tool to work in support of other therapies.
And I think this is really a valuable conversation because I think it is easily something that's overlooked. And as it relates to our environment and not realizing or stopping long enough to say, how does this make me feel? Whatever this is, whether it's this desk, whether it's this room, whether it's this home, whether it's the view outside the windows how does this make me feel? And then obviously the next step is why and what can be done about that, because there's an awful lot about that we can control when there's so much of the rest of the world that we can't.
Right.
So
Right.
why not control the things that we can, so that when we are trying to think about our thoughts in the way that we think, that we're not doing it from a place that's already unsettled without realizing why.
Right.
So I love this. Okay. Any last thoughts before we wrap up? This has been fantastic, and as always, I wish we have an hours.
Maybe we should do it again sometime.
We should do it again sometime. We absolutely should. Neuroscience is one of my absolute favorite topics, so I believe we absolutely should, and we absolutely will.
I think we should talk about feng shui when we do it too.
All right, let's do it. Big topic of mine. I would absolutely like to talk to you about that for a really long time. So you're going to hear Nicole again, everybody. So just be ready and excited for that.
I am just so happy to share this. And I think what we covered today is a lot. And I think that this is a good stopping point.
It's a good place for people to feel not overwhelmed. Because I myself have a tendency to think that I need to throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at someone, and then it's so overwhelming that, the typical response is I'll do nothing because it's all just too much.
Shut
but
down.
there are these things that are simple, small steps that I believe some of them will have a tremendous impact. If nothing else, just stopping and saying, how does this space make me feel? Just that alone, because the majority of the time, we just bumble through life and assume that everything is the way it is because that's how it's always been, without saying, but it doesn't always have to be just because it's always been. So I hope that people listen to this a couple of times, and not just in their home and not just in their workplace, but another one is the car. Another one is the garage. So all of these things matter to a tremendous degree. Like I said, I believe that we need to take control of our mental health in the areas that we can, because there's so much of the world that's coming at us that is beyond our control, beyond our belief.
Yep.
Okay, so somebody wants to learn more about you. They want to stay connected. You've got a book coming out. How does somebody find you, connect with you, stay on top of this book that's going to be released so that they are all things Nicole Baxter moving forward? What is that?
You can find me on Instagram at nbaxterdesign. Excuse me. You can find me on Instagram at nbaxterdesign. Or you can also go to my website, same thing, nbaxterdesign.com. That I can sign up for my newsletter. And also, I do have a handout on there that if you sign up to download, it's a guide to help you emotionally evaluate your home.
Well, everybody needs to do that, for crying out loud. And if you are out and about right now, all of that will be in show notes. So you don't have to worry about that. When you get back, you can just go to the podcast page, scroll down, click those links, and you will be able to find Nicole and all of her wonderful wisdom. So that said, Nicole, I close every show with the same question. What is one thing that you absolutely believe to be true?
That we have the power to do good things.
Well said. Well said. And that is something that is within every one of us every day. So fantastic. I hope that everybody listening takes that power today to do some good things, because I know that when you do good things for yourself and your home, that goes out as a ripple effect of how you show up to others and the rest of the world. So don't take that for granted. So beautiful. Thank you so much, Nicole, for being here today. And thank you for the tenacity in actually joining me, because it was a little nutty in the beginning. So thank you for making the effort to be here. You will be coming back, so I cannot wait for that.
Thank you.
And absolutely. And thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to this episode of the Game Changer Podcast.
Thank you, guys.